We now come to talk about the third strategic choice that comprises an entrepreneurial strategy, and that is choosing your identity. This is actually one of the more subtle choices one could make, and so much so that we've split it down into 4 dimensions as well. That doesn't make it any less critical, less difficult, or anything like that. And it doesn't mean that you can't think about how it fits in with customer technology and competition choices as well. What identity is essentially how you represent your business, your venture to various constituents. For instance, your employees. Part of what makes strategy effective is that you're not managing or micromanaging effectively what other people do. So your employees have to make decisions just like you do. But what you want to ensure is that they are aligned with the direction you want your venture to go in. This is not just something unique to entrepreneurial firms. This also applies to corporate strategy or not-for-profit strategy or anything like that. So your identity is effectively how you want to communicate priorities to your employees so that they can figure out what they should be doing based on what you want them to do. You also want to be able to represent yourself to the market. This most critically arises when you're thinking about how you want competitors or suppliers or customers to see what you are doing, especially with regard to competitors. Are you the sort of firm that is going to be an aggressive competitor or a firm that is going to try and stake out your particular area of the market? Those are things that comprise your identity. You also want to represent yourself to complementary asset holders. These are people outside your organization, other organizations, that have assets that you need to access in order to create value. You want to know, those people want to know whether you're orienting yourself towards them or you see them as a rival in negotiations over the division of surplus. And it turns out that how you create your identity, how you choose to represent yourself to employees, the market, complementary asset holders, is in effect a choice. All of those things are choices. Now, of course, you can't just freely choose. You have to think about how it fits in with everything else and with each other. But that's how you should think about identity. So the way we represent this is in 4 dimensions: founder objective, internal capabilities, external position, and ecosystem. Your founder objective is an overarching choice in identity. It means different things to different people, but it's just, generally speaking, a communication of what you as a founder want to accomplish. Are you going to have any social, or is everything going to be purely commercial in your business? If you think about Tesla was founded on missions and other things to be saving the world from environmental disaster. It need not have been founded that way. It could have been founded just to be able to make another car company. That's a very different choice of identity, but it does communicate to the world what it is doing. It does allow it to make sense of things like acquiring Solar City, which is aligned on that saving the world type mission. This founder objective also starts to tell you about when a founder will think something is successful or not, when you'll be making progress. The second dimension is internal capabilities. What capabilities are you going to emphasize that you want to be developed inside your organization? So that's how you put together the founding team as part of that. Do you get more technical specialists, business development specialists? Do you emphasize marketing, and so on? Where do you allocate internal resources? Do you allocate it towards making the product better or to lowering costs? That's just some of the designs you could have. And what is your incentive structure like? Are you giving people stock options? Are you rewarding people based on how their individual area does? Or is it all based on the entire profits and shareholder value of the company? All these things are part of the development of internal capabilities. And so when I said identity was choosing how you communicate to employees, it's on this dimension that becomes relevant. As for your external position, the third dimension of identity, how are you going to position yourself to achieve your objective? There are other people in the market. There are competitors. There are rivals of various kinds. There are people producing substitute products. Where are you going to align yourself? Where are you positioning yourself in the value chain? Who are going to be your allies? Who are going to be your competitors? How are you thinking about the evolution of the industry? How are you thinking about your own reputation? So when Elon Musk decided to open up all of his patents for electric vehicles for Tesla, what he was saying was, I am in a market where I'm trying to compete with other car makers. I am not trying to compete with other electric car makers. If they can do well, that will help my mission of developing a new car and also my mission of environmental success. You may have already come across these sorts of choices before when looking at Porter's 5 forces, which makes a distinction between competition and substitutes, which can be rather nebulous. In effect, electric car makers and car makers are all competitors to Tesla. But what it chose in making this decision to compete to be a global car company was it chose a market that put all of those cars in the competitor lock, and substitutes were things like trains and other form of transportation. Again, this is a choice you can make in terms of your identity, and for external positioning, that is how you are communicating your strategy and your choices to the rest of the world. The final dimension for identity is ecosystem. The most obvious choice a venture has to make is where are you going to be located. The idea is to locate the idea usually is to locate near resources you need, but sometimes you have some trade-offs there. Do you locate near the resources, or do you locate closer to your customers? And this could happen not just in physical space, but in terms of where you have your network flows, where you conferences you attend, trade shows you emphasize, and even the kind of funding you get and the capabilities of those funders. So all of that constellation is what identity is. Now, we already saw this earlier with a discussion of Clover Food Labs as a very clear choice of identity. Clover Food Labs, as you might recall, was a food truck business founded by an MIT engineer trying to make healthy foods. It has now gone beyond the food truck business, and this is how it started, to its physical stores. And in its physical stores, you can get things like, this falafel pita, and you'll notice there you can get pour-over coffee. The orders are not taken at a checkout, but by a person sitting there with an iPod or an iPhone. And the kitchen is open for everybody to see, much as might be it's not quite with a food truck, they're usually a bit higher, but it's right there and open. The idea is conveying to customers that everything is fresh and allowing them to see that in the construction and the layout of the entire business. And that seeps into other choices too. Here's Clover's, from their website, their own discussion about why they're different from other fast food companies. And it is an interesting read. One I'll bring note to is it impacts on technology. Trying to be fresh means you have no freezers. A freezer is a technology that every single other restaurant chooses. But at Clover, they don't do one. Okay, what does that mean? That means a lot of other things flow from that. One is everything has to be fresh. You have no choice. Second, they organize stuff around that, showing people that you cut the tomatoes just before eating them. They'll keep better. They end up committing to keep money in the region. Why? There are no freezers. It has to be kept in the region. They end up using a lot of organic ingredients. Actually, that's a little surprise with the lack of freezers, but it's part of their identity. Okay, so there's no preservatives, no natural flavors, etc. going on there. Everything is paid to improve health. But what's really interesting is, you know what you can't have with a freezer? You can't have meat, poultry, and similar products. So this is a vegetarian restaurant. Now I want you to step back and think about that. It's a vegetarian restaurant that does something unique. It does not say it is vegetarian. That is a choice of external positioning. Clover Food Labs has decided they are competing in the fast food market. They are not competing in the vegetarian market. That is quite a distinct choice, but it does change how they operate. It means potentially they can get a higher diversity of clientele, because if you're vegetarian, you'll know about this. But it also means that they do not have to specifically push themselves for the taste of vegetarians. They don't have to, use quinoa and other things like that necessarily because it's the latest fad. Instead, they can focus on taste. And they're going to figure out how to bring this fresh vegetarian food and make it taste well. Whereas once you label yourself vegetarian, maybe you don't have to do that as much. That's at least the thesis that it's operating under. What I want to turn to now to show you how important identity is to convince you that it is something that is chosen right at the beginning. It's a choice. You can go one way or another, but it's chosen invariably at the beginning of organizations, and some of the most successful ones, you can see that identity persist. And I'm going to show you two examples of that now.